If you're planning on taking the free sampler by Tutorials Dojo on the new AWS Certified Generative AI Developer Professional, you've come to the right video. I suggest that you pause while reading the questions, think about the answer yourself, and then hear me going through the thought process. Let's go. Hello YouTube. Today I am going to attempt the sampler from Tutorials Dojo for the Generative AI Developer Professional exam from AWS. Now this is a bit premature, I have to say. This sampler came out before even having the official exam guide and the details that should come with AWS Skill Builder on November the 18th. But Tutorials Dojo jumped the gun and they have provided a sampler already. Now Tutorials Dojo, they're a really reputable source of practice exams. They've been doing this for years. They have a lot of experience crafting practice exams for AWS. So I have no doubt that they probably made a really good job with these exam questions. But the fact is, we don't know if the real exam will be like this because it's not out yet. The exam official guide and the official AWS Skill Builder course. So I'm assuming that once those are out, probably this sampler as well as the practice exams from Tutorials Dojo, they will update to better reflect what will be in the exam. But still, I wanted to give this a try. I passed the AI practitioner and the machine learning engineer associate exams about a year ago. And after that, I also passed the solutions architect associate for AWS. So I do have some background and I am intrigued and curious to try out the Gen AI Developer Professional. I have worked with AI applications in my job for the past year, but not with SageMaker or Amazon Bedrock. We didn't use the AWS products and services for that. So let's see how much I remember and if I'm able to answer these questions well. I'm going to attempt these questions by myself and see how well I can do. So we're going to go into review mode instead of time mode. We're going to keep things casual. I do use time mode when I want to simulate the real exam, but as I said, we have no guarantee that this sampler is going to be accurate regarding the exam. So let's just go into review mode and keep it casual. I will read to myself silently the questions. I suggest that you pause the video when the question is on screen because I will be editing the video so that I just show the things that I'm talking about or thinking out loud. But let's jump in. Professional Cert probably has a lot of long and winded questions. So let's go ahead and see. All right. We're going to go ahead and start the quiz in review mode. So reading this question, I think that the keywords over here are no code and that the team is considering Amazon SageMaker feature store. It says the team considers using it, not that they decide. That's some wording there for you. But this no code makes me gravitate towards SageMaker Canvas. That we have two answers over here that are using that. So I would be inclined to use those. I don't like this using Databrew to create the churn prediction model directly within Databrew. I don't think Databrew is good for that. Databrew is good for cleaning the data and stuff, but not for creating the machine learning model. And then not necessarily to Amazon Redshift. Then here, instead of using a Canvas, we're using Studio. Like Studio can allow like certain no-code features, but there's also like it's more complicated than Canvas for sure. So this could be, but I do think that it would take more work than using just Canvas. And then this one, I don't like the word. I don't like the idea of using DMS to migrate a database into S3. Like database migration services to migrate between different databases, whereas I would rather use Glue Databrew to clean the data and normalize it before we put it into S3. So this is my answer. Let's see if I'm right. And this is correct, my reasoning. And you can either pause the video and read this yourself, or go ahead. But I'm going to jump into the next question. All right, so after reading the proposed answers over here, I don't like this answer because it's using SageMaker Jumpstart, and creating the image generation model from scratch is like so much work compared to just using a foundation model in Bedrock. So that doesn't look like the correct answer. I also don't like multimodal embeddings to encode textual and visual data for similarity searches. We're not trying to check whether images are similar or not, and we don't need to create vector embeddings. So I'm between these two questions over here. And I have not heard about Amazon Nova Canvas. That was not included in the MLA or AIF. So it's a bit of a 50-50 toss-up for me over here. I think I'm going to select this because it does say here collaborative text and image generation sessions for designers. And this Canvas thing indicates to me that maybe the people don't need to be like super technical when it comes to Gen AI, but I could see also this one being correct. Let's see whether I had it correct or not. So it was this over here. So let's read about Amazon Nova Canvas because I don't know what that is. Primarily intended for real-time, human-in-the-loop creative processes such as brainstorming or refining visuals in a shared workspace. Okay, not optimized for automated large-scale image generation pipelines, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, now it's something that I learned today, that Amazon Nova Canvas for real-time, human-in-the-loop creative processes. So yeah, this is not like for something at scale, but it's something for like maybe online sessions or live things happening. So that's something that I learned, and I failed this one because I hadn't heard about it, but it was between these two, so that is cool. I will slowly scroll in case you want to pause and read the explanations a bit more. But I will go to the next one now. Okay, so after reading the question and the answers, I do not like these two answers. I think like doing any of these two is not going to solve anything. Like redeploying it to a new endpoint with the same configuration, you're still going to get the violations. And retraining the SageMaker model is going to give you a slightly different model than the one over here, but it uses the same data. So it uses all the configuration before. It's not going to do anything differently if the training was good or the algorithm was good. So we have these two over here, and you could of course adjust the SageMaker model monitor threshold to like what you think is like better data quality, and the data quality will be different depending on the data sets. But I do like this one over here because you can create a baseline job on training data, and it will automatically detect what is like quality data based on the training data that you have. So I'm going for this one, but it could be that this is not possible, and this is the best answer. So let's check. And looks like my reasoning was sound, and I will slowly scroll this. If you want to pause. So let's read over here. Yeah, so this is what I was saying. Like adjusting the threshold will reduce the number of alerts. You can do that manually, but you are not really fixing the problem with having an outdated baseline dataset. So let's move to the next question. Okay, so I couldn't care less whether we're using Amazon Textract to do anything over here. The key thing is the least operational complexity, right? And this makes me go to develop a knowledge base in Bedrock and just use that knowledge base to execute RAG queries. That's how you use RAG with Bedrock. I don't like using AWS Glue to transform and clean the data and then putting it into Amazon Redshift. You cannot query Amazon Redshift for RAG, or it's going to be like much more complicated than having it in a knowledge base. You probably need to do some intermediate steps with that. And also, I don't like storing the document embeddings in Amazon SageMaker Data Wrangler. It's going to be more complicated. So these two are complicated. I'm leaning towards this one as the easiest one. I wonder if, like, because of the security and regulatory environments, like, we actually need to create a different model with SageMaker to comply with that. But if it's stored in S3 and it's already being kept in check, like the compliance and the regulatory things are all over there, then I don't see a problem with creating a knowledge base from that. So I'm going to mark this one and let's see. Yep, I think my logic was sound. That was the most direct thing to do. I will slowly scroll down. Okay, so Model Context Protocol has not entered MLA or AIF curriculum. The last time that I checked, it's also a relatively recent thing from months past, but it's been really, really popular. Basically, it's something that translates apps into a way that LLMs can interact with. So the instructions or like API endpoints are easily understood by an LLM, and the LLM can perform actions if you do that. It's pretty much a way to integrate other applications with an LLM and LLM interfaces. So I haven't heard about Amazon QuickSuite, but I'm going to assume that it's not that. I don't like using the Amazon Q Developer CLI with MCP. The CLI is for development and for doing things manually, but you should be using like some scripts and IAC and not doing this all the time. And so we have, or setting the API gateway or the MCP server. So the API gateway is offering a front end to whatever is in the back end. But MCP, that uses a server. You need to set up a server to use MCP, and this should connect to the databases and external APIs. So I'm inclined to set this over here, but I'm wondering if maybe you should set up an API gateway and the MCP server to connect to the API gateway. Since there's nothing being said about setting the MCP server to connect with that API gateway, I'm just gonna choose this one and see what it says. All right, well, I was completely wrong with this. Let's see first why my answer was wrong. So it's incorrect because simply configuring the MCP server does not solve the issue. It's not sufficient to enable integration with external data sources. Both the MCP server and the Q Developer CLI need to work together to facilitate real-time data access. Okay. Here we can see, for example, the architecture with MCP. So we have a client, there's the server, and then goes the external service. This is like the app that you're trying to communicate with your LLM or with Amazon Q Developer. Amazon Q Developer now supports MCP, allowing you to extend Q's capabilities by connecting it to custom tools and services. Okay, well, I did not know that piece of trivia over here, and I don't like the idea that you have to manually be using the CLI to get the MCP, but I guess if you are communicating with that external service and it's supposed to be real time, I guess you can also type in the prompts and the commands that way. Okay, it's fine. I guess I was thinking about like the development and IAC, and that is not where the question was headed. Let's move on. Okay, for this question, the key for me is like they need to fine-tune, but they prefer a low-code, no-code solution. And there's a lot of yada yada, but pretty much they want to do it, reduce manual intervention, ensuring scalability and ease of use. So like ease of use, low code, no code. To me, there's really only one possible solution, which is to use autopilot with SageMaker Jumpstart. Jumpstart is pretty much you just select the model, which is already deployed, and then you can use autopilot to fine-tune the training, to do the training without having to do a lot of code. The other alternatives, so like script mode, studio, and tuning jobs, you need to do quite a lot of code in those, especially when it comes with Amazon EC2 instances. So I do think that B is the only option over here. So let's check. And that's indeed the case. Two powerful services that can really help, blah, blah, blah. Do pause if you want to read over here, but I'm jumping into the next question. Okay, this question seems quite easy to me. Increasing the temperature is not going to do anything. Comprehend doesn't solve anything over here. It's something completely irrelevant. We cannot fine-tune the model because it says here without retraining the model. So pretty much set up a Bedrock knowledge base and integrate it with the private data sources, knowledge bases and RAG. That's what you need to be doing. So I would be highly surprised if this is not the correct answer. And indeed it is. Okay, so this also seems like quite a straightforward question. I couldn't care less whether they're using Kendra and Textract. It's not really part of the problem over here. We want to do these requirements in the shortest time possible, so training a custom model and then deploying an LLM in SageMaker, that's definitely going to take way too much time and resources. I don't want to be using AWS Glue to clean and prepare the data, like audio and video data. Like I would need to configure the own algorithms over there. We can be using Amazon Transcribe, which is an AWS AI managed service, or we could be using another transcribe or service, another caption generating service. But why would I create my own when there's already some over there outside? So these two for sure not. And then it says leverage translate to translate the text into English. Yes, we want to do that, but we cannot translate cannot just translate what it hears from video and audio. You first need to transcribe what you're getting from there. And anyway, you then apply a pre-trained model in Amazon SageMaker. Like you don't need to be doing that if you have Amazon Bedrock with Jamba for summarizing the text. So that is clearly the one over there. Like the one we're lacking a transcribe or a transcription step over here. So. And indeed, that is correct. Okay, this one has a lot of text, but it's actually much simpler if you understand what's going on. You want to optimize the company's RAG application and enable semantic search. So out of all these options over here, I'm pretty convinced that it's the one with Kendra, because Kendra is for semantic search. It indexes documents and is able to find chunks of information depending on what the meaning of the user query is. So just selecting the others that don't make sense. You don't want to store embeddings into SageMaker Feature Store. That is for storing features, data to train machine learning models. And I also don't like the idea of running semantic searches with SQL queries, so definitely not. Then you could use Textract to extract text from documents, but then why are you putting that into Redshift and using OpenSearch service to perform the semantic searches. Like the OpenSearch service is itself a database that you can use, and you don't need to put into Amazon Redshift for that. But apart from that, Textract only extracts text. It doesn't extract like the meaning or anything. It doesn't do any kind of semantic thing. And then with Lambda over here, use Lambda to process the files and generate embeddings. That's going to be like quite complicated. You need to create your own code to do that. And then you cannot use QuickSight to perform this semantic searches. QuickSight is for visualizing data, to create graphs and charts. So definitely not. So it has to be this one for sure. And of course that's correct, because I understood that Kendra is for doing semantic searches. Okay, so this question is more about security and networking than anything about AI, but that always features a lot in any sort of AWS certification. And the correct answer is this one over here. If you go for this one, you're using an internet gateway to access the internet, so you're not going to be doing communication over the AWS network. All communication must occur over the AWS network, so that doesn't work. The NAT gateway to provide outbound internet access, like NAT gateway is part of providing that outbound internet access, but you cannot provide it without an internet gateway to start off. So like that architecture doesn't work. And again, we don't want to provide outbound internet access because all communication must occur over the AWS network. And then finally, you could use VPC and VPC peering. The thing is that S3 is a public service, and so like you cannot access S3 from a VPC by default. You need to create private endpoints to access public AWS services. So this is technically possible as long as in the second VPC there's an endpoint towards S3, but why create it? You don't need to create a VPC peering connection at all. You just need private endpoints for these two public services. So that is indeed the correct answer. And I'll slowly scroll down, pause if you want to read, but that was quite clear to me. All right, another question that has to do with privacy and security, and we need to block all external network access during model training. So that's what we have to do over here. Encrypting the dataset will do absolutely nothing for that, because in order to train, you need to decrypt whatever you've done, and then it's not going to be protected once it's being processed. SageMaker Model Monitor is not used for training, it's used for monitoring things that are deployed. So that these two are definitely not correct. And then between these two, you could use a private endpoint to access text track and recognition, and this would be keeping things private during the training. But I am inclined to use network isolation during the training job, because that it is a feature that you can use, and it's actually quite useful and doesn't require a lot of configuration. And I suspect that if there would be malicious code, like it's saying over there within SageMaker AI, it could potentially use this VPC endpoint to maybe leak some of that data. So I'm inclined to go for one over here, and my reasoning was sound. Let's however check what I want to be 100% sure about this one. Yeah, it says does not fully block outbound network access. Training container could still potentially reach other endpoints unless network isolation is enforced. And yeah, knowing that there's this feature about network isolation is really handy. Okay, this is the first time that we get multi-option answer where you have to select 2 out of 5. So these are always fun. And let's see, I I'm pretty convinced that you need to register the model in model registry in order for it to be accessible via SageMaker Canvas. In general, registering the models in registries is part of any machine learning workflow where there's like versioning and stuff. And I'm pretty convinced that you need to give necessary S3 bucket permissions. Just because the developer has put things into S3 doesn't mean like the domain, the SageMaker domain or the data specialist team automatically have access to those to that bucket. So definitely we will need this. So let's see if the others make sense that are not marked. We don't necessarily need to convert to TensorFlow or PyTorch format for SageMaker Canvas compatibility. Like Canvas allows the use of custom models. I don't think you need to create a shared workspace within SageMaker Canvas because we are in the same domain, in the same SageMaker domain. It's mentioned. Yeah, they belong to the same SageMaker domain. So if we were in different domains and different accounts or something, like sharing the workspace would make sense. And then creating a SageMaker endpoint for the model. If the model was stored within SageMaker and it needed to be accessed externally, then you would create a SageMaker endpoint. But the model is outside of SageMaker, it's in S3, so that's kind of like the opposite. So let's see if my reasoning was sound. And yes, that was correct. Let's move on to the next. Okay, this is a cool question. And we have the situation where like reliable internet access is often unavailable. So it's an edge computing situation. And if you know that AWS IoT Greengrass has to do with edge, deploying ML stuff on the edge, then together with SageMaker Neo, sometimes it works hand in hand, then you would be quite convinced that this is the correct solution. And it makes sense too, like object detection can be used to train the model. SageMaker trains that model from the labeled data that we get from recognition. So we use that algorithm and then we deploy a trained model into IoT Greengrass, which also uses lambdas to handle the decision logics at the factory. So that's at the edge. Let's look at why the others don't make sense. So this pretends to use Amazon Kinesis video streams to analyze videos in real time. The problem with that is that there's not always reliable internet access, so we're not always going to be able to access Kinesis video streams. There are going to be interruptions, so that is not going to work out reliably. Use recognition custom labels to train the model and deploy it. Now, you cannot use recognition custom labels to train a model to detect dimensions of packages. You can only use that to train recognition to put certain labels on images, but that doesn't make sense. And then using Amazon Event Bridge to monitor inference results, like Amazon Event Bridge can route events, but it needs extra help in order to monitor inference results like other products, like Model Monitor or something like this. Then train the model using SageMaker and then deploying it to EKS clusters running in each factory. Like if we knew that these Kubernetes clusters were running on premises in the factory, maybe this could be, but like if it's Amazon EKS, like that requires access to the cloud, reliable access to the cloud, which is not guaranteed with how this answer is worded. Or maybe you use the open source EKS distro and deploy it into your own facility, into your own factory. But in any case, then using Amazon SQS to queue routing decisions and sending them to the cloud, that's also not going to be reliable because we don't have reliable access to the internet. So really, only number one is what we can use. And indeed, that is correct. All right, I'm gonna stop there and wrap this video up because I don't want it to be a very long video, but letting you know that I did complete the whole test, and the results were that I got 27 questions right out of those 30, only failing 3 of them. Honestly surprised that I did so well. I was expecting more convoluted questions or more difficult questions, but I found out that if you had the concepts clear in your mind about machine learning engineer associate, that carried you pretty much most of the way. And I don't know, I felt that the answers were quite straightforward most of the time. There were a few things that I didn't know about or hadn't been covered in the previous exams, but if you felt that this exam was too difficult or you couldn't follow along, I highly suggest that you study for the Machine Learning Engineer Associate certification first, because this was pretty much just built on top of that. It did take me 1 hour and 30 minutes to go through all 30 questions, but of course I was talking through them, and that increases the time, as well as I was taking it casually. So I think that I could have perfectly taken a bit over an hour on doing those 30 questions. I'd be really surprised if the exam ends up being this easy, so to say, although of course this was review mode and not timed mode. I do think that probably there are some new things, concepts to learn about, and the AWS Skill Builder course just came out, so I encourage to go and see some things over there. I will be creating a video and a blog post talking about what I see in AWS Skill Builder, and I will be studying from there and preparing. This doing so well in this sampler has given me a confidence boost, and I think that I really want to attempt the AWS Generative AI Developer Professional certification within the beta period. If you liked this video and you thought it was fun to see my thought process on going through some sample questions, do hit like and subscribe to the channel to let me and the algorithm know that this is something that you would like more about. Of course, I would only analyze questions that are available publicly and from reputable sources like Tutorials Dojo. So it's not like there's a lot of free materials that I would be covering, but I'm ready to do this more often in the future with other samplers if that's the case. So stay tuned in this channel for my next video, where I go a bit deeper into what we have in AWS Skill Builder and preparing for this new exciting professional certification. If you want to see my previous video on the certification, do go ahead and click on this video over here, and see you around. Thank you.